Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Sarah Avery, and I am the Executive Director of Quanta Change. And thank you so much for joining me today. So, do you feel responsible for other people, like really responsible for them, for how they feel, for how their lives are going in some way? Maybe like they're all on your shoulders, their lives are all on your shoulders somehow. And I'm not like, talking here about, children or elders or someone who, is incapacitated in some way, needs some extra help that you've agreed to. Not that at all. I'm talking about fully capable adults. Do you feel responsible for them in some way? Maybe do you even feel responsible for how other people feel who maybe have never asked for your help? Um, yeah, does that sound familiar? Yeah, I can totally relate. So, in my practice over the last 22 years, I've found that there are really particularly two kinds of people who really come to me with this problem. So the first kind of person is someone who probably maybe you feel anxious about how other people are feeling all the time. Maybe you walk on eggshells around other people. Maybe you find that there's usually someone in your life, many people throughout your life who, really, unless you're walking on eggshells, unless you're making sure they're okay, catering to their needs in some way, they're volatile somehow. Maybe you really tend to anticipate other people's needs or what you think their needs are and try to meet them before they're ever expressed. How about this? Do you feel consideration or compassion for other people who you find really don't have the same consideration or compassion for you? Maybe do you take other people's stuff on? Do you take on things, projects, activities or something, tasks for others who probably wouldn't do the same for you? And I'm wondering if there are other people who have actually pushed you away in some way for this behavior. Maybe they're saying that you're just too much. Maybe you've been accused of being over functioning. Oh yes, raising my hand. I have heard that, and been described that way. So, and maybe along with this, you're feeling like you are just spending so much energy on other people out of your concern for them, and you're feeling either like you're not getting that same consideration back for them, like I said, from them, like I said, or you are feeling just like sometimes we say, I give, and I never get anything back. Or maybe you're just feeling really exhausted by all of this, and you're realizing you're really not taking care of your own needs as a result. So if so, I can relate to all of that, as you can probably tell. And then let me tell you about the second kind of person who I often see in my practice. So these folks tend to just feel like they need, in order for them to be okay, they need the people around them to be okay also, to be functional, to have things be smooth sailing for them, to be okay in some way. Maybe if you're this kind of person, you find that, I've seen this a lot in my practice, that if you're this kind of person, you find that you're very stable, you've got it together, you generally get things done really well, you're successful. You find that you have a lot of people around you who are in crisis a lot, who seem to need a lot of assistance to get to the place where you would like them to be. You would like them to be stable and functional and together and moving forward and successful in life. And it seems like they need a lot of help to get there. And you're feeling like you won't feel okay unless they're doing better. Does that sound familiar? And maybe you're finding, if so, that it's a lot of work. Maybe are you even getting exhausted by all of this work that you're having to put into other people? Does that sound familiar? Okay, so whether either the kind of people, if you're one of these kinds, this sounds familiar to you. Have you tried to stop this in some way? Have you tried to start taking better care of yourself, or not focusing so much on others? Maybe you've done therapy or some kind of self-help work, perhaps around setting better boundaries. Perhaps you've heard and internalized this analogy that, metaphorically, you need to put your own oxygen mask on first before helping someone else with theirs. You know this, you can repeat it at the drop of a hat. I tend to say to lots of my clients, maybe this is something that you've learned, that no matter how much care and concern you have for another fully capable adult, you cannot be responsible for how they're feeling or how their lives are going. That doesn't mean that you're not responsible if you say something insensitively or inappropriate, or you're mean one day, or something like that. You're fully responsible for your own behavior, but there's no way that you can actually be responsible for their lives and how they're doing. So maybe you know all of this. Has that helped? Have you found that you can take better care of yourself? You can have some boundaries. You can have some space between yourself and how others are doing. Is that how that's gone? Or if so, that's fantastic. But if not, are you still feeling the same? Are you feeling worse? Are you feeling like you need over time to even work harder to make sure they're doing okay? So if so, that's not your fault. It's not because you haven't worked hard enough. It's not because you haven't set the right boundaries, set them strongly enough, anything like that. So today, what I'd like to talk about is why that happens, where that pattern of feeling so responsible for other people comes from, and what can actually help to change it. So the source of this need to make sure everybody else around you is okay comes from something that Quanta Change calls learned distress. So learned distress is the feeling that you absorbed very early in life, that there's something wrong with you being just the way that you are. And as you're absorbing this feeling that there's something wrong with you from the people around you, from how they're feeling when you're very young, before the age of 2.5, your brain is also developing a survival mechanism that allows you to survive with that awful feeling that there's something wrong with you. And it also allows you to sort of fit like a puzzle piece with the people around you. So your survival mechanism is sort of formed in a shape that works really well with the people around you. And then because the sense of self, which is like a container that stores how you feel about being yourself, stores your learned distress, stores your survival mechanism, it is actually automatically generating all of the negative situations, all of the situations, but the negative situations, conditions, relationships, interactions, thoughts, and feelings in your day-to-day life. They're all being generated automatically out of your learned distress and your survival mechanism. And so what happens is, however you fit well with those people around you early in your life, your sense of self keeps generating relationships with people that kind of feel the same to you, relationships that feel the same. And so you keep ending up in the same situations over and over again. Does this sound familiar? You say, wow, that person is just like that other person. Yeah, that's because this automatic work of energy is just generating those same kinds of relationships for you over and over again. So that's why this has been happening for you. And so then we get to, why is it that all of these mechanisms, maybe that you've tried therapy, self-help, boundary setting, everything that you've learned about how things should work, how better, healthier relationships work, why hasn't learning all of that stuff and learning those techniques, why hasn't that helped? It's because your sense of self that stores how you feel about being yourself is inaccessible to rational level change. In other words, you can't think your way out of your learned distress. Does that sound familiar? Have you said, no, I know that it's not helpful for me to feel this way and be behaving in this way, and yet no matter how hard you try, you just can't find your way. You can't think your way to a better feeling about taking better care of yourself, about setting better boundaries. Does that sound familiar? That's because of this sort of rational brain roadblock, this sort of wall of protection around your sense of self that protects it from your thinking brain changing it. So that's the bad news. But the good news I have is that Quanta Change, this work that I've been doing for the last 22 years, was developed to get through that rational brain roadblock, was developed to get to your brain and access your sense of self in a way that allows you to bring about really deep feeling level change that you haven't been able to get to through other means. And the way that Quanta Change does that, briefly, is that it works with your brain during sleep. There are two reasons for that. The first is that sleep is when your rational brain is shut down entirely. And so with that rational brain shutdown comes a deactivation of that wall of protection around your sense of self. So it allows you into that feeling storage container about how you feel about being yourself. And the other reason for sleep is that sleep is when your sense of self is getting recharged. So your sense of self is getting depleted during the day by doing all of this automatic generating of your life. And then just like your cell phone battery has to get recharged, so does your sense of self. And that's happening while you're asleep. And so what Quanta Change does is it tells your brain, it allows you to tell your brain that what you want to recharge with is not your learned distress anymore, which is pretty much what what you have been recharging with like every night of your life, unfortunately. Quanta Change says, I want to recharge with well-being instead. Well-being is this feeling at your core that you are just great being yourself, that you have everything you need within you to be well, to have your life work well. And so as you recharge with your core well-being over time, what happens is layers of learned distress are peeled off permanently. They're gone. And as that happens, your natural well-being expands to take the place that that learned distress was sitting. So obviously, if there's more and more well-being, you feel better, which is great. And your life works better in a multitude of ways, one of which is your relationships work better for you. You're more able to take good care of yourself because you're really in the center of your life now, instead of everyone else around you being at the center of your life. What this feels like is that spontaneously one day, you'll have this sense that you've never had in your life before that, oh my gosh, that's their stuff. That's not my problem. That's their stuff. They've got to deal with that. They've got to take care of their lives. They've got to make themselves feel better. They've got to get themselves together on their own. There's nothing I can do about that. Not because you've seen evidence of that, because you actually feel it here. It's really amazing. It's like this big weight is lifted off of you, this weight of responsibility for everyone else around you. And it feels like they get to actually be themselves. It's okay for them to be however they are. Even if you look at them and you think, well, wow, that is not how I would do that. Wow, I really wish they were feeling better. You don't lose your compassion for other people. You don't lose your empathy. But what you lose is that sense of, and I'm going to have to fix that for them, or else I'm not going to be okay. So let me give you a couple of examples of what this is like. So the first is an example of a client who came to me and said, my biggest problem that I really need to get over, to overcome, is just feeling like I am responsible for making sure everyone else is happy all the time. And it's getting really exhausting. I'm seeing it with my family, with my friends, in my work life. It's getting kind of overwhelming and I really need help with this. She happened to be someone who was at this interesting transition time that all parents go through, where her daughter, in her case, her daughter had just gone off and had spent the first few years in, or first few months of her life in college. And, that's a really big transition point where the balance of responsibility for someone is really shifting and shifting onto their newly adult shoulders, right? So parents, have you been through this transition period? Are you going through this transition period right now? How is that for you? If you're a person who feels a lot of responsibility for others, it can be a pretty rough transition. It can be pretty confusing, right? So she started working on this, and she was starting to see this play out, this kind of automatic change of, wait a second, I'm not responsible for how they feel. She was starting to really see it in her work life, where the team that she runs, she could say, well, this is how I'm doing with this here. I've changed this, and this to make sure that I've taken care of my job within our team. And then, okay, wow, folks are taking this kind of hard, this change that just happened. They're taking it kind of hard. Well, they'll work through it. I've done what I can do. They're going to have to take care of their own feelings. And she was really feeling like, okay, they're going to do that, instead of, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. How am I going to get them together? How am I going to make sure they're okay? It was a really big change for her. And she also, they took a family vacation, and her daughter came. I think it might have been like spring break or something like that. And there was one day where they were headed out to the beach. My client was headed out to the beach, I think, with her sister, and she called her daughter's room, and she called her daughter and said, hey, we're headed to the beach. Do you want to come? And she said, it was a day where my daughter was just, she got up on the wrong side of the bed. She was having kind of a rough day, despite the fact we were at a beautiful beach. And, life happens, life, people have bad days, right? And instead of feeling like she had to really manage that and make sure that her daughter felt better right away, she said, you know what? I want to go to the beach. I'm going to go to the beach. And she told her daughter, you know what? I hope you're feeling better. I really hope you'll come with us. Really want to, spend some time with you, but I'm headed to the beach. And she headed to the beach, and her daughter showed up, and they had a good day. But she said it was really different because she didn't feel that weight of responsibility for making sure that her daughter was okay in that moment until she could go off and have her great beach day. So if you're in this place, either with a young adult making transition, or just generally feeling really responsible in that way that you need other people to be happy before you can be okay, this is kind of what this can look like. Let me give you an example of the other kind of person who feels like not necessarily responsible for other people feeling okay, or you're not the walk on eggshells kind of person, but you're the kind of person who says, in order for me to be okay, everybody else around me needs to be together and functional and going and okay. And so a great example from her life in terms of this change was, she had this volunteer gig at the holidays on top of her job, where it was like a toy drive for disadvantaged kids, and she had various jobs in that volunteer organization, and there were a multitude of changes that happened for her in the course of these couple of months of volunteer work. So I'll just give you a couple of them. One was that she would feel like, as she started into it, she realized that the way she'd felt her whole life was, when faced with like 100 toy orders that she had to fill, she would feel like she had to put sort of doctoral dissertation level consideration into getting exactly the right toy for every single kid. She would feel like in order for all of this to go well, I've got to be responsible for the kid, for their parents, for my coworkers, all, my volunteer coworkers, all getting this right also. And it was exhausting. And she was finding herself super stressed out by this. And so she went through some quanta change cycles. This is the mechanism for moving layers of learned distress out. And as she did that, she went one day to fill some more orders. And all of a sudden she went, oh, wait a second. I've got a certain amount of information about the kid. I've got a certain inventory of toys. I just get to do the best I can with that. And I remember saying something like, this kid's going to get a Care Bear. That's what's going to happen. This kid's going to get a Care Bear. It was an appropriate toy for them. She didn't have any more information that would have told her, no, they wanted a toy pony or something like that. And they got a Care Bear. And she went, okay, it's okay. I am okay. I don't have to make sure that everything is this 100% over the top, perfect kind of way for this other person. Another example in that was that she's an incredibly competent together person in terms of organizational skills. And her volunteer boss came to her and was really kind of building her up, kind of, buttering her up, saying, you're so good at this. We really need you. And she had witnessed this volunteer boss being pretty dysfunctional, actually, in a way that was giving her concern about whether she really wanted to work with this organization again, because it was so dysfunctional that it was dysfunctional for all of her coworkers, for donors, for, obviously the families who are getting toys. And so she was really questioning that. And yet here's this volunteer boss saying, oh my gosh, you're so good at this. We really need you. And she said that previously really would have sucked her in. She would have felt like, oh, they need me in order for this to go well. All of these people need me to do this so that everything can be okay for them. And all of a sudden she went, wait a second. No, not my responsibility. It will happen some other way. But if I'm really getting to the point where I'm feeling like this isn't the right organization for me, there are other places where I can put my volunteer energy that might be more functional and less stressful for me. And it's okay for me to do that. It's okay for me to look out for myself. I can still contribute to the world in some really good way, but it doesn't have to be here, and I don't have to take care of these people and make sure they're all okay. So that was a big change for her. And again, these kinds of changes are spontaneous. They're not something that my client has on a list necessarily. They're not something that we sit there and plot and plan out. It's really, they come to me and say, oh my gosh, this happened and I've never felt this way in my life before. And it was so much easier and it was so much lighter. And I just feel so much better. So if you're the kind of person who has felt really responsible for other people in the ways that I've been talking about today, there are other ways, but these are the ways that I tend to see it in my practice. I hope that you're feeling a bit of hope that really this can change for you, that you can take better care of yourself, let other people take care of themselves, have more space between you and other people and their concerns and their problems in a way that, like I said, you're still going to have compassion and care and concern for other people in the way that you always have. You just aren't going to feel that weight of responsibility for them so much anymore. So if this sounds interesting to you, if you're interested in finding out more, the first thing to find out is which pattern of learned distress and survival mechanism you have. So there are 6 of these. They are called the idealist, the perfectionist, the optimist, the caregiver, the defeatist, and the dictator or the benevolent dictator. And so the reason to find out, you can find out for free which one of these you have. And the reason that you find out which pattern you have is not to maybe examine it further. Maybe you're thinking, Sarah, I've done 20 years of therapy. I know where this stuff comes from. I know the thing about my mom. I know the thing about my older brother, whatever. I've examined that to death. It's not that at all. The reason that you find out which pattern you have is so that you're going to find out what learned distress and survival mechanism you're going to be peeling off to reveal more and more of your core well-being, that feeling that you are just great being yourself, that you get to be yourself and have a more functional life out of that place of well-being. So in order to find out which of these patterns you have, you're going to go to my website and take a free, in-depth, scientifically validated personality test that measures your learned distress. And I will graph that for you and send you a free report that shows you your pattern of learned distress, your survival mechanism for dealing with it, and the ways in which you might see Quanta Change help you really feel better, help your life work better. So I really hope that you'll do that. In order to do that, you go to my website, quantachange.com, Quanta change.com, and click on the free report button. So I hope that you'll do that, and I'll look forward to hearing from you. And thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you've gotten something out of this and that you will join me again next Friday to hear about another way in which Quanta Change really can help you feel good being you. Thanks so much.